Molly, thank you so much for all you do, for having us here. Putting on these Right to Life group organizations and gatherings is not an easy task. It is a struggle. So many groups around the country try to do this. I don't think anyone does it as well as Molly. So please support her and her organization, because we are raising money as well and to release the movie. And so you guys don't want me passing envelopes for the $10 million we need. So just give Molly the 15 grand. So I'm not gonna sit up here and talk that much. We brought you guys a little teaser of the film. It's about 2.5 minutes. We're gonna play it. The name of the movie is called Roe v. Wade. Has anyone heard of Roe v. Wade here? All right. But before that, as Molly said, yeah, I've been in Hollywood for about 20 years. Cathy, 10 to 15 years, and I think this will be the last movie we ever make in Hollywood.
Nice knowing you all.
So I'm gonna show the teaser on the screens here, and then we're just gonna open it up for questions you can ask about the film, why we made it, about the actors, what happened, the story, anything you guys want to ask, and we'll try to answer the best we can, or come up with some fake stories for you.
We have been in our second civil war for over 50 years now.
A bunch of disorganized men are going to rid this country of abortion restriction.
Doctors must protect life from the point of conception.
Are you sure you want to do this?
You're a liar. You did this. You led me down this path. You didn't want them.
You seen the post this morning?
saw it.
Idiot. There's a leak.
They've got Hollywood on their side.
This is a conspiracy.
Today, my mommy killed me.
We found a girl in Texas.
We'll give her a pseudonym. Call her Jane Roe. We found the right pregnant girl and the lawyers we could control.
When you see a kid out of law school get to argue to the highest court in Texas,
we want to rally behind the women's movement to get the TV media on board.
What he's trying to say is I am the first Negro woman to graduate Harvard Medical.
Faith in God, respect for his law.
You should join us. I promise you'd have more freedom.
But we weren't Jewish, so we didn't say anything. And then they came after the mentally deficient. But we weren't deficient, so we did nothing. And now they're coming after the unborn. And so you're gonna do nothing?
It's God's duty to forgive. It's ours to rule the law.
You're changing your vote because your family found out, or was it the media?
If we don't sort this out, fur will fly today.
You were trying to control this Warren, old buddy. That is completely unethical.
In the matter of Roe v. Wade, I want the case re-argued.
So you want to enslave women?
I gotta go before I blow a gasket.
We got the majority. We're gonna win.
This is beyond the authority of the Supreme Court.
We are the law of the land.
These girls should not be put through the pregnancy and should be entitled to an abortion.
The true silent minority.
who is speaking for these children?
We will hear arguments in Roe against Wade.
So anyway, the film will be coming out in the fall, and we haven't really put a real trailer together, so it's probably hard to understand the exact story. It was just sort of some clips of what we shot over the summer. We're in the middle of post-production now, so we're still cutting the film, and so we'll probably have a rough cut done sometime in April. We're going to be showing sort of, I would call it a pre-rough cut, at the NRB, which is the National Religious Broadcasters Convention at the end of March. So if anyone's there, feel free to come. So, Cathy, you have anything to say?
I think we should just open up the floor. We'd love to hear your feedback.
How was John Voight to work with, and how did he get attached to this?
John Voight was actually the first person we attached to the film. And he's one of the few people in Hollywood who wasn't scared to be known as a conservative. So he wasn't worried about his reputation, which was nice. And
So John, you know, yeah, we attached John probably about a year before we were able to shoot the film. We had a relationship with his manager, and we were able to get him the script, and he read it, and I think he was so blown away by the facts that went in. So Cathy and I spent 2 years reading over 40 different books, not only pro-life books, but pro-choice books. We read about all the people who were involved in the movement at that time. Some of them have biographies, some of them autobiographies. And we discovered so many different interesting facts that I think John was really blown away by the amount of the information that was in there. And he gave an interview a couple weeks ago at the Movie Guide Awards, which is sort of the faith-based awards. And he was asked, you know, how do you feel about all the backlash? And he said, well, we're telling the truth. You know, just like Molly said, we're telling the truth. So if you want to see backlash from telling the truth, what else can you say? But the media likes to spin that any way they can. So.
And John played Chief Justice Warren Burger, who was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court at the time, and he really dug in and did his own research and didn't take our word for it. He really dug into the script and had a lot of questions and was excited to be a part of something that also told the truth. And what was it like directing him? He's a legend. We were like little kids.
He directed us.
He directed us.
So, you know, it was interesting. So, you know, a lot of people have heard of Roe v. Wade, but nobody really maybe knows how it got to the Supreme Court or how it was actually decided, why it was decided. So some facts that maybe not everybody knows is that Roe v. Wade was actually heard twice. It was heard once in 1971 and then again in 1972. In 1971, there were only 7 Supreme Court justices. 2 had retired due to health issues. They heard the case. They sat down. They had an internal discussion of how they were going to vote, and the vote was going to end up being 4-3 in favor of choice, with Warren Burger and Blackmun voting in the opposition. Essentially, they were voting for life. And since Chief Justice Warren Burger was going to lose, he said, well, guys, maybe we should rehear this case when Nixon appoints 2 new justices.
Sound familiar?
Hoping that Nixon would appoint 2 conservatives, and that would flip the vote 5-4 for life. And the other justices who were voting for choice were really upset about this private internal discussion, and they leaked the internal discussions to the Washington Post, leaking stories to the media. Sound familiar? So it was ended up on the front page of the Post that what Burger was doing could change the outcome in the court. Well, this at the time led to an outrage in the media. There was obviously a huge movement, women's movement going on at the time, and a lot of the justices were pressured now because now their names are out in public, how they're going to vote before they voted. And so they got pressure from their friends and their wives. And you know, when your wives tell you what to do, you kind of have to do what your wives tell you how to do. So, and even their daughters. And some of the justices even have wives and daughters volunteering for Planned Parenthood at the time, which we thought was a conflict of interest, which many people don't know. And so 2 of the justices ended up flipping their votes and changing really based on family pressure and the media. And so it ended up being, they reheard the case, and then it ended up being 7-2. And we lost. Actually, 2 of Nixon's appointees, one voted for life, and the other one voted for choice.
Another question? Hi, I'm Reggie Littlejohn. I also have a pro-life movie script, so I have a practical question, which is, what are you doing about distribution? You know the Gosnell film was really smacked down, and Unplanned is having a lot of problems, and I'm wondering how you are going to be handling the distribution issue.
Well, the folks who made Gosnell and Unplanned came from the pro-life movement. Nick's been in the pro-life movement for the past few years. I've just been in the film industry for the past 15. So we come from a movie-making background, and we made sure to reach out to the folks who made Gosnell prior to their release, and of course we're close with the folks who made Unplanned, and we're just learning from their mistakes. So what we're doing to ensure that we don't have the same blockades that they do is we're raising our own money to control our own release and control our own destiny. We were fortunate enough to have a few studio partners take interest in us very early on, because unlike Unplanned and Gosnell, we got a firestorm of national press while we were in production. We actually shot under a fake name. We shot under the name 1973 so that no one would protest our movie or have any kind of situations, but the fact that we were shooting actually got leaked to the press, and a former crew member sold our script to a lovely publication called The Daily Beast, and it turned into a media firestorm, and the media literally had a meltdown over the fact that we were exposing the truth and making this pro-life movie, and exposing facts such as Margaret Sanger being a eugenicist. They claimed that we're lying about calling Margaret Sanger a racist, but eugenicist, racist. And so because of that national press, we're having a little bit different of an experience in our distribution and in our release than Gosnell and Unplanned are experiencing, because they're kind of staying in that more independent, faith-based community, whereas ours is going to be a
I also think
release.
with Gosnell, it's a very segmented, small story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to be honest, until a couple years ago, I'd never heard of Kermit Gosnell.
No, most of us hadn't.
And none of my friends or anyone has heard of Kermit Gosnell. And so I think the challenge was that, like I asked at the beginning, have you ever heard of Roe v. Wade? And I think everybody in America has heard of Roe. So it's a broader type of film, and I don't think the struggle was essentially, I know there was some theaters that pushed Gosnell out, but I think it was a bit of a challenging. I think it was also a much smaller film than ours, but we will have those challenges, and that's why we're sort of here to get your support and pass the envelopes for the $10 million.
And it's really important, too, that everybody supports Gosnell and Unplanned as well as our film. If we can show a precedent of Gosnell doing really well and Unplanned doing really well, that's only going to set the stage for, we think there should have been 5 pro-life movies this year, not 3. Because there are actually 3 pro-abortion movies in production in Hollywood right now with huge stars. So the more the merrier, in our opinion.
Who has a mic?
Go. First of all, thanks for showing up tonight and coming out here.
Oh, over here.
And I actually had a similar question. I thought Gosnell was, phenomenal, and obviously didn't get the attention it deserved. And now I see that Unplanned, I'm sure you've heard, has been rated R for really no good reason. And are you concerned about something like that happening to similar to your movie? And how do you prevent something like that from happening?
So the way you prevent something like that from happening is that you make a rated R movie and you put in things that you're willing to take out, and you show it to the MPAA, and they'll come back and says, take this out, and like, well, we're gonna take it out anyway, right? And so you go beyond that, so you have stuff to pull back. Because we have to have a PG-13 movie. It's gonna be a big struggle for Unplanned having that R rating. I think the reason they had the R rating is because they showed a fetus.
No, I think they showed an abortion. They showed the procedure itself or something like that. I think that was the reason for their R.
What was the reason for the R? Anybody?
Well,
they
show a drug-induced abortion.
Yeah, they showed the.
Yeah, well, that was the
in her
MPAA's
bathroom.
reasoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously everything is politics,
Yeah.
but we can put war movies on where people are getting blown to pieces, and that'll be PG-13. But I mean, what are you gonna do? You can't fight Hollywood, or we can try. Anybody else? I think somebody over there had a question.
What inspired you guys to make the film?
That's a great question. So somebody came to me a couple years ago, and I had a personal story. I used to be pro-choice, and so I grew up. So I'm 43 years old, and so when I sort of was in my teens and 20s, I was taught that when a woman got pregnant, it was just a clump of cells and a gob of goo. And so just get rid of that if she gets pregnant, no big deal. And so I, as science progressed and I got older and I learned about that you're actually really killing babies, I actually went through the experience myself of having been involved in 2 abortions in my life in my early 20s, which took me on that journey. And there were a lot of other things involved through that journey and the learning experience. And I'd always heard of Roe, and I was very thankful when I was in the early 20s that we had abortion. And so, to me, Roe v. Wade was all about abortion, about women's rights. And so when somebody came to me, and then I had my own pro-life story, and I was doing a movie one day, and the director came, and he liked my performance, and I guess he must have Googled me, saw that I was pro-life, and he pulled me aside, Nick, I have a secret I need to talk to you because I can't talk to anyone else in Hollywood about this. But I just read your pro-life. And I've written a script called Roe v. Wade. I said, well, why would I want to make a pro-choice movie? I'm pro-life. Because the first thing that popped into my head when I hear Roe v. Wade is pro-choice. I don't think pro-life. He's like, well, do you know that the girl that they brought to court was manipulated, lied to, and then became pro-life? I said, no. And did you know that they made up fake statistics in order to influence people in the media and the courts into the decision? I said, no. He's like, this is a pro-life movie, the conspiracy. And so I said, oh, interesting. So I read a little bit about it. And after every book led to another book, led to another book. And it unraveled almost like the movie JFK, if anyone's seen that with Kevin Costner, like a conspiracy movie. And it paralleled also with the things that are going on today. So our lead character in the film, the narrator of the film, is some of you have heard of a guy named Dr. Bernard Nathanson. So Dr. Bernard Nathanson was the largest abortionist in American history. Him and his clinics committed over 70,000 abortions. He was one of the founders of NARAL, and he was extremely instrumental in getting Roe v. Wade passed, because he would come out and he would say, 1 million women a year are having illegal abortions and 10,000 of them are dying in back alleys. The year after Roe v. Wade, the sonogram technology got better. And he decided to help with accuracy during abortions, he would perform them under sonogram, the new sonogram technology. And when he did so, he saw that he was actually ripping a baby apart. And when he saw this, he converted. He converted from being pro-choice to pro-life. He came out and wrote a book. And he admitted about all the lies that they made up. They planted stories in Newsweek and Time in order to move the agenda. They used the media, something that we're now trying to fight back and do the same thing with. To me, that was an incredible story. It was not only a conversion story from becoming pro-choice to pro-life, he also went from being a Jew to becoming a Catholic. He got baptized at St. Patrick's Cathedral. I'm half Jewish, so maybe, no clapping. I'm going to tell you that story in a second. We were the only film in American history to be allowed to shoot inside St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City, and that was amazing. And you give a round of applause to the Catholics for that. So I'll give you guys a little anecdote now that I told that. So, raising money for this movie has not been easy. Getting it made and now having to raise it and for distribution. So we're a couple weeks away from shooting, and the budget keeps on going over because, as you saw, we rebuilt the Supreme Court. We shot in places like D.C. We had 74 casts. We had John Voight and a bunch of others, and it was a period piece. So we had to dress every single set to period. We had over about 60 different set pieces, and so we were raising money through the last minute. And so I got introduced to one of the biggest Catholic donors in Louisiana at the time. And we met, Cathy and I went to meet with him, and he had a foundation. He said, you know, I really like this movie that you want to produce because of the story, the conversion to Catholicism. It's really the focus of my foundation is to get people to convert to Catholicism. And I'm thinking of giving you $500,000 for your movie. He said, Nick, have you ever thought about converting to Catholicism? I said, Joe, I'm a Jew. For $500,000, of course I'll convert to Catholicism. He only gave me $250, so I'm only half converted. So any I can't tell many of those type of stories, but anything?
In the back.
Yeah, hi. I'm an attorney, and I went to law school specifically to become a pro-life attorney, and so Roe versus Wade was always kind of one of the things that I studied. And I was always fascinated by Sarah Weddington and Linda Coffey, the two female attorneys that tried the case. And recently, I don't know if you saw, but Sarah Weddington was at the signature with Governor Cuomo in New York of that horrendous 40-week abortion bill. And I was wondering, did you guys try to reach out to her? Were you able to get to them at all?
Well, actually, some of the more salacious elements and surprises in our film came from Sarah's own book. Mm-hmm. She was the one, in her book, she was the one that outed two of the Supreme Court justices for having wives and daughters that worked for Planned Parenthood. So it's funny because a lot of people think that some of the more salacious facts in our movie are coming from pro-life propaganda. That came straight from the other side. But no, we didn't reach out to Sarah, and I think...
No, I don't think she would have talked to us. No. I mean, she's not really portrayed... So she's in our movie, she's portrayed the daughter of Kelsey Grammer. Greer Grammer plays Sarah Weddington in our movie. It's probably one of the best performances in the film. So Sarah, you know, Sarah was a very young lawyer out of UT Law School at the time. She had struggled at the time getting a job. It was very difficult at the time especially for women, to get jobs in a law firm. She was actually volunteering for some women's groups, including the Division of Planned Parenthood and NARAL at the time. And the opposition were searching the country essentially not only for a girl, but somebody to represent the girl, to take it. The whole case was manufactured and manipulated. And so they found the girl, and they found Sarah and Linda Coffey. They'd both gone to UT together. And although Sarah tried the case, she, you know, other than really as a great presenter and a great debater, which she was at the time, she was the youngest woman ever to present in front of the Supreme Court. It was also her first case ever. But she had a huge team of lawyers from Planned Parenthood and NARAL, some of the biggest lawyers in the country, essentially prepping her for months at the time, doing all the work. And it was really them. It was two lawyers, really, a guy named Cyril Means and Harriet Pilpel, who were both Planned Parenthood's lawyers, essentially the best constitutional, you know, lawyers on that side at the time, who essentially prepped Sarah for the whole thing. Linda never really wanted the spotlight, and she ended up sort of bowing out after the first Supreme Court case on disappearance. She also got in trouble later in life for forging documents and got arrested and lost her law license, which gives some speculation on how they got Norma to sign the documents to even go to trial, which she didn't even read. But that's that's all all of that's in you'll see that in our film. But no, we didn't. I don't think Sarah would have responded to us. I'm sure she's not going to appreciate it. And you know, Sarah and Linda, I think, are the only two people that are, I think, probably even still alive today that are in our movie.
Yep.
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. You know, about research, Mildred Jefferson, I actually met her, and Dennis and Dolores Horan. Dennis Horan is dead. Mildred is dead. They were fantastic people. My dad was with Ohio. Well, we came Ohio Right to Life with that guy from Cincinnati that everybody knows. And these guys were doing everything out of the trunks of their cars. I mean, they were all working people. Like, my dad was a thoracic surgeon. Mildred Jefferson was a surgeon. You know, Gene Diamond, I don't know if you even know about him, but he was the only obstetrician and gynecologist at that time, predating Nathanson, and that really tried to say, what are we going to do about this? And I'm just wondering if you're honoring them too by not over dramatizing them. And they were dramatic enough in their real lives. I mean, I saw that one thing where the priest is talking to her on the bus. That doesn't seem like the Mildred Jefferson that I met when I was 20, but I just wondered, you know, I can see the temptation to do that, and I just hope you didn't, but we'll see.
Yes, I mean, a lot of the actors, listen, when anybody sees a movie, it's not going to be exactly how that person was in real life. Also, most people in America have never even heard of Dr. Mildred Jefferson or know how she acted, and we didn't really have video to see either. We wrote her the best way we could from interviews she had given and speeches. Stacey Dash from Clueless, who played Mildred, brought her own heart and soul to that character. We had one of our executive producers was a woman named Dr. Alveda King, who was also close to some of the Jeffersons and gave us some background and gave Stacey background on how to play. So for those of you who don't know, Dr. Mildred Jefferson was the first African-American woman to graduate Harvard Medical School. She also became the second president of National Right to Life. She sort of plays the pro-life protagonist in our film. And I think that Mildred's, every character in our film takes a different position of how to tackle what they want to accomplish in life, whether on the pro-choice or the pro-life side. So although Mildred was a Methodist or Baptist, her belief as a doctor and the reason she fought so hard for life were 2 points. One, she felt it was the #1 killer of African Americans in our country. And so she took up the fight really to sort of save her race. 2, she truly believed that to take religion out of the argument and to make it about science. She believed life began at conception. Regardless of religion, life began at conception. And for her, taking religion out of the argument would help them win. Now, that wasn't everyone's point of view. So she's also there, with, as you saw, with Father McHugh. Father McHugh was sort of the Catholic priest at the time who was really designated to lead the pro-life movement for the Catholic Church and build it. And he's the one who started National Right to Life and put Juan Ryan in charge and all of that. So him and another guy named Robert Byrne, they believe in God's law and natural law, and that it should be about God. So you'll have conflict between Mildred. You can't have everyone getting along on every side because that's not reality. Obviously not all the pro-life groups in America get along. I'm sure not everybody here in the room always gets along. So, and even on both sides, you have, everyone had their own agenda and felt, which way they should fight. And so we wanted to really show the conflicts within the pro-life movement, the conflicts in the pro-choice movement, and try to really make as much as we can a fair and balanced movie that told the truth. And at the end of the movie, so and for the audience to decide.
What's really important to remember, though, being that these are mostly historical figures that a lot of you and a lot of America is familiar with, we made this movie to show the truth of what led up to the court case and really to open the floor for people on the other side of the issue to understand the facts, do their own research, and maybe have a change of heart. So while we're all on the same page, if we just made a puff piece for you guys, we wouldn't be accomplishing anything. So it's really important that each of our characters on both the pro-life and the pro-choice side were relatable and people that our audience can find little pieces of themselves in. Because if we're not doing that, we're not accomplishing anything. Similarly to the movie, did you all see Hidden Figures, that wonderful movie about the NASA scientists? Well, those were not their personalities. Those 3 women, that was not a reflection of who they were as people. But in creating those performances, the actresses embodied characters that people could relate to, and the message was spread even more powerfully. So it's really important to remember that, even though our movie is factually accurate, taking those small liberties hopefully will hit people's hearts a little bit stronger.
And and I truly believe that with today's world and today's generation, the way to move the needle and consensus is really through pop culture and the media. I mean, look, we've got a president of the United States who got elected because of pop culture and Twitter. And so if he can move the needle using pop culture, I think that's really the way to attack things in general, because, and the left's been doing this for years. They've been using the media, they've been using Hollywood, they've been using years to move their agenda. So it's time we do the same thing. And I think this is why we try to make, not only a factual film, but we try to make it fun. It's not a boring, preachy movie. I mean, you saw the trailer, there's things blowing up and people getting shot and police chasing people, and it's entertaining. I mean, all of it's accurate, and but you probably see a scene there in the Playboy Mansion, right? And you say, why is the Playboy Mansion in a pro-life movie? Ugh. So, and I'll tell you about that scene. So the reason that scene is in there was because in the late 60s and the early 70s, Planned Parenthood would do fundraisers with Playboy in the Playboy Mansion, and they would auction off Playboy Playmates to go on a date with to raise money for Planned Parenthood. So you have people working for Planned Parenthood auctioning off Playmates in there, which we thought, I'm sure Planned Parenthood's not gonna really like that, but it's in it. By the way, all of that was not in a pro-life book. That was all in a pro-choice book. And so, but there's no nudity, there's no cursing, no bad language in our film, but to, have a little flavor, gets the young people out,
I have a question for you. So the theme of the convention is bringing America back to life. So it seems to me that title would be very, it would really draw President Trump's attention. And so I'm curious if you thought of reaching out to President Trump or even delivering him maybe a rough cut of the movie, asking for his support and endorsement.
We're going to do that. So I actually worked on the Trump transition team. I mean, probably half of you will hate me now, but. And so we are trying. So our biggest advocate inside the White House is Kellyanne. One of our original investors who ended up not investing because he got a job in the White House, but no longer, was Steve Bannon. So we're going to, once we have a screening, we're going to try to do a screening for the president in the White House. Hopefully he'll say yes, but
And if he doesn't, maybe he'll just tweet about it.
So, any other questions?
I was just wondering about the fact that you had to get rid of half of, or actually most of your cast resigned and walked off your stage. That sounds like such a fun story. That's such a fun story to tell us. Yeah.
Hashtag fake news. It didn't happen. So we had 2 cast members drop out.
Two day players.
2 day players. So we had a cast of 74 people plus a few thousand extras. And the girl that was going to be playing Norma McCorvey was an actress from Los Angeles that stalked our casting director down for this role. And I mean hammered him for weeks and weeks and weeks to get this part. Well, this brilliant girl didn't read the script. And about 2 weeks before we were in production, she read it and panicked because she's young and wants a career and was terrified that making this movie would hurt her in the long run, and very graciously called us with her mom, because of course the character of Norma is a late teenager at the time, called us with her mom and bowed out of the film. I think we had one other day player that had a 1-scene role that also ended up declining the part once she saw the context of the film. But for an actor, the media was claiming that we were lying about what the movie was and that the cast was unaware of the nature of the film before they signed on board. Well, a cast member has to read the script before they attach themselves to a project, so that's pretty darn difficult. But yeah, there were 2 out of 74
Yeah, and
that dropped out.
the media said, people were walking off set in the middle of the shoot, but that was great because we ended up getting like 20 articles out of that.
Yeah.
So
Helpful.
and so we decided to make up some things along the way and get some more news. I mean,
Well, we did have one notable crew walk-off. Do you want to tell that story?
Oh yeah, I was walking in my car one day, and this girl I'd never seen before comes up to me. She says, "Are you the director?" I said, "Yeah, I'm the director." She says, "Go F yourself," takes off her gear, throws it at me, and walks off and quits. I found out later that the electrical department had hired her for the day because they were missing staff, and they never told her what the movie was about. So we called the press and said, our whole crew is walking off set. It's horrible. What are we going to do? The next day we had 20 articles about our movie. It was fantastic. So working on the Trump transition, you learn from the best. So, what are there any other stories we need to tell about what happened?
I mean, there are so many. You'll bring it out. Ask the right questions. You'll get it out of us.
Yeah, so we ended up having it. Listen, guys, we ended up. I'll give you one second before I forget. The cast. So you probably didn't see all the cast there. So I'll just tell you who was in the cast because I think we had a really great cast. So other than John Voight, we had John Schneider from Dukes of Hazzard. If any of you grew up watching Dukes of Hazzard like I did, John was in that. Steve Guttenberg from Police Academy. Joey Lawrence from Blossom.
Corbin Burnson from LA Law.
Yeah, Corbin Burnson from LA Law. Jamie Kennedy from Scream. So essentially every has-been from the 80s and 90s. But I'll tell you, when I was on set, I probably stopped watching movies after the 90s. So for me, it was like, they're still stars to me. It was amazing. So, but I think, and none of them walked off. They were all super professional. And some of them were pro-choice. I would say half of them were pro-choice.
50-50.
And we actually had one guy who was pro-choice when he started and became pro-life by the end of the movie. But anyway, somebody had a question?
Okay, so you made the movie, so I'm wondering, do you have any plans for the future? So once you're done with this, do you have something that you're planning to do next?
Our future's over. Don't you know that? So we are.
We're prepping our next movie now.
Yes. It's we call it, so the movie is essentially is a true story. So in the during the American Revolution, both the British and the Americans would offer emancipation to slaves that would run away and join with them. And there was a slave named James Armistead, no relationship to the Armistead ship, who goes and joins George Washington and General Lafayette. And when they discover he's super intelligent, extremely well read, they ask him to turn himself over to the British and start feeding them back information to be a spy for them, which he does. And he gets positioned with Benedict Arnold. And then he gets positioned with the general of the British troops, General Cornwallis. And so America was losing the war at the time. And Cornwallis decides to move all his troops from New York down to Yorktown, Virginia, to cut off the French. And when James hears about this, he gets George Washington the information, which allows George Washington to move his troops in surprise attack Cornwallis, getting him to surrender and win the war. And then at the end of the war, James is in front of the Continental Congress asking for his freedom. And they said, "So you fought for the Americans?" He's like, "Yes." "Well, where's your proof?" "Well, I was a spy for the British." And so, without proof, they sent him back to the plantation for 2 years as a slave until Lafayette hears about this, comes back to America and vouches for his freedom, and he wins his freedom. Since Hollywood loves a slave movie, or what won a Green Book this year?
Green Book and 12 Years a Slave and Hidden Figures.
Yeah, we call it our redemption movie.
But it's an incredible story, and it's a story of faith, too, and we're really excited to delve into it after we...
Yeah, there's a faith-based element where James doesn't have faith in God, and through his journey, he learns to have faith in God. And it won Best Screenplay at the Harlem Film Festival last year, and we're really excited for that to be our next movie once we get this done.
But for us, it's no different than Roe. It's another true story that's been buried in history, same as Roe is. Hollywood will see it differently, but it's no different.
I'd like to first share with you a quick story about Harry Blackman. I was in my third year of law school, and I was walking by the student lounge and all of a sudden realized Harry Blackman was talking to my fellow students who were all dripping and with adulations for him. But he went on and proceeded to tell them how the lawyers were like the priests of medieval times, they were the glue of society, keeping it together. But in any event, it's my understanding that Blackman was first initially going to go pro-life, but it was William Brennan, the Catholic, that convinced him to go and vote for the pro-death side. Is that your understanding?
So William Brennan, which was played by Robert Davi, he's the one who introduced the entire concept of the right of privacy. So after Griswold v. Connecticut, when this magical new constitutional right of privacy came into our Constitution, Brennan thought that would be the good idea to utilize right of privacy to allow abortions, and that's how he pushed Blackman down the path. So he was able to sort of use that, but I think Blackman was looking for a reason to vote that way. That's, he needed something to hang his hat on, because most of Blackman's research that he did was in the Mayo Clinic. And the reason, Berger picked Blackman to do it were for two reasons. One, he felt that Blackman would have the most experience because he worked at the Mayo Clinic previously for about 10 years. And also, he was Berger's best friend. They went to elementary school together, they grew up together. Essentially, Berger got him on the court, and so Berger felt he could control the case if Blackman wrote the opinion.
And Berger actually broke protocol to have Blackman pen the opinion. It should have gone to Justice Douglas, who was the senior justice
of the
at
majority.
the time.
Yeah, so when the Supreme Court makes a decision, you have to write the opinion. It's the senior justice in the majority or the minority, depending on where the case is coming down. And so the senior justice in the majority would have been
Justice
Douglas, but
who was on the other side.
Yeah, but Berger decided to have Blackman write the opinion against typical standard Supreme Court protocol in order to control how it went down.
And Corbin Burnson's performance as Blackman was absolutely brilliant. So really looking forward to you guys seeing that. Anything else? Any other questions?
Go ahead.
Just wondering if you could comment a little bit on the personhood issue.
On the personhood issue, well, personhood wasn't really brought up during that time. I think the challenges really were the lack of scientific evidence. Now, I know there was scientific evidence at the time, and some of the American Medical Association really came out and said it was really about a year before, but a lot of that wasn't brought into evidence. And so the challenge with personhood was there was no person. I mean, back then there was no person there. It wasn't a person. It was they didn't really understand that there was life until there's an old English term called quickening, which means when the baby moves quickly, and that's when they thought life began. And this is when they came up with a three-trimester system. And this is why today, with all new medical technology and the fact that we know, that a fetus, I know we're saying a fetus has a heartbeat in the first 6 to 7 weeks, but actually I think you can detect it even early.
18 days.
First 3 weeks. You can actually, it actually happens, the detection I think comes a little later. And so you didn't have that science back then, and a lot of it, but personhood wasn't really brought into it. Go ahead.
The courts claim they couldn't prove that.
Yeah, they couldn't claim that there was scientific evidence to the fact of that, and that was the challenge. I mean, even the pro-life side during the arguments even messed that up, and you'll see how they messed and goofed up the whole thing. I mean, first of all, when the case went, just to let everybody know, when the case went in front of Texas, to begin with, nobody took it seriously, because in Texas they thought, how could anyone in their right mind allow a woman to kill her own baby. So a judge won't allow that, so what do you need to prepare for? And so they're completely unprepared. They botched the case. And then, they took the same sort of a little bit of arrogance when they went in front of the Supreme Court as well. And they just didn't really think it was going to be the case it was. Even Warren Burger, who was the Chief Justice, when the case was brought in front of the Supreme Court to decide to hear it, Burger says, well, we just heard the Vuitch case. He said, Roe v. Wade in the grand scheme of things is really just not that important. He didn't think it was important. They'd already decided, for life and health, and they didn't think it was that important. It wasn't, nobody knew, I think, what it would become today at that time.
And our side made a lot of mistakes, and you guys will see that in the film. We're by no means trying to say that as pro-lifers, we did everything perfectly and we lost because they cheated. That's just not true. They outplayed us, they manipulated, they lied, but we made mistakes too, and we show that in the film because we really wanted to portray an accurate depiction of what happened. So I really hope that the pro-life groups understand that and see that, and don't take that as a criticism. We're not perfect, we all make mistakes, and we can't all present ourselves as being the perfect movement and villainize the pro-choicers. It's just not true. So you'll see faults in our side in the movie as well, and we hope that you guys acknowledge those and celebrate those and take ownership of those instead of criticizing us for exposing that too.
And listen, thank you, Cathy, that was good. There are people today who don't believe life begins at conception. I know that's hard to believe, but I have this argument constantly with people. I live sometimes between New York and LA and Miami, and they're blinded. They don't understand, or they're just blinded by their argument. So, it's still a struggle today, even though today I think every single scientist in the world will tell you that life begins at conception. And you can beat this until you're dead in the face, and that people just can't get around it. Today we offer, I use the argument, we offer protection to unborn sea turtles and eagles. If you kill them, you'll go to jail and pay a fine.
Oak trees in California, can't cut those down either.
Pupfish?
Pupfish, you'll see that in our film.
So it's just, listen, and one of the justices, what was it, Potter? Potter Stewart, a couple of years after Roe v. Wade, he came out and he voted on an environmental case that said that lakes, rivers, and trees should have constitutional rights, personhood rights. And he voted against the rights of an unborn baby. So there's hypocrisy there. So, what can you do? Fight and show the truth. That's all we can do.
Question, did you have any contact with Mel Gibson, advice or support from him?
So, no, Mel's he's very hard to get in touch with.
Is Cam?
Yeah. So a lot of people around him. So there was a guy named Steve McAvity, who was one of the producers of Passion of the Christ. He gave us a lot of advice and direction before and now.
And their entire PR team jumped on board and is representing our film that represented him for Passion.
Yeah.
So their entire publicity.
So, Nick, I just asked you the question. I'm the pro-life attorney, but I switched over here so I could ask you a second one. Okay. But I just want, my whole focus is personhood. I'm the president of the Personhood Alliance. And I just wanted to, with all due respect, correct a little bit of an answer that you gave about personhood, because it really was an integral part of the case. They talked about personhood. In the decision itself, it pivoted around the idea of personhood. And there's a great article that you guys should read by Charles Rice, who's my hero. He passed away, but he was a great professor. He wrote an article just a month after Roe versus Wade was decided, and it was called Roe versus Wade, the Dred Scott of the modern times, or something like that. And he compares the dehumanization of the unborn in Roe versus Wade with the dehumanization of African Americans in Dred Scott. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. So Charlie Rice, who had 7 children. I've read all 10 of his books.
And we spoke to Charles Jr. as well.
I spoke to some of his family members, and he was a hero for the movement. He wrote an amicus brief in the case. He also was one of the founders of Americans United for Life. And yeah, you're right in a lot of things. The challenge in making a Hollywood movie for the mass audience is not to get in as much to the weeds of the legality as possible, and trying to keep it a little bit more broad for understanding. The movie's more about getting to the Supreme Court and how they got there than actually the actual Supreme Court case itself, which we show. I mean, there are a couple scenes.
We do deal with personhood in the Supreme Court where they teeter on the difference between a person and a citizen, because that was also one of the points. So we do feature that in the film also.
And so, it was tough. I mean, learning a lot about this, I wanted to try to stay as broad as possible. I mean, we do have 2 scenes in the Supreme Court, and we don't stay in there that long. A lot of the Supreme Court stuff, which I think is interesting, is the conversations that the justices have behind closed doors, and how they're making their decisions, or trying to manipulate each other, or it's almost like politics. It's like they're lobbying each other for the right decisions. But yeah, getting into a lot of the weeds and legalities. I'm not a lawyer, so we just, I think, confuse a lot of people. But we talk a little bit about it in the film.
This is me over here. I want to say thank you to both of you for an amazing. Okay, you got one more. Okay, go.
One more thing. Does everybody have a cell phone?
Yes.
Can you get it out? I'm not asking for money.
Or your cell phones.
Or your cell phones. Okay. Can everybody go to RoeVWade.com? RoeVWade. RoeVWade.com. That's our GoFundMe. Don't donate to it. But if you scroll down, there's a Facebook share button and a Twitter share button. And if you all wouldn't mind sharing it on your social media so that we could spread support throughout our community and just awareness, and other people could see the teaser that you all watched tonight, that would help us tremendously.
Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you so much.
Molly, thank you.
What do we do to help you get, other than what you just told us? How do we help you to get the movie out there and get the support?
If you could spread awareness for us on social media, keep checking back on the website. What we're going to be doing this summer is doing private screenings for pro-life groups, church groups, all across the country. And so if you have an organization or a group that would like a private screening in your city, reach out to us. There's contact links on our website, or you could email us at rvwfilm@gmail.com, and we'll be happy to set up a private screening for your organization this summer before it hits theaters.
Yeah, and even if it's a church group or any kind of group that wants to, have a couple hundred people for a screening, email us, and we'll keep your name, and when we're ready, we'll reach out to you to
we'll make it happen.
set that up. We're going to be screenings all over the country before the movie comes out to gather support.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.